Declan Ganley, thank you for joining us this morning to discuss some of the issues that were raised by the publication of our book, Against the Corporate Media, 42 Ways the Press Hates You. How does the press hate you, Declan Ganley?
Ireland is it's a microcosm, it's a small market from a press perspective, but a very concentrated example amongst countries in the Western world of a media bubble that is very closed. The RTE is the church of the Irish chattering classes, if you will, of the Irish establishment. It and the Irish Times are the leading thought shapers, agenda setters, and the political establishment follows that lead. It's not that there's some sort of one shadowy figure who is in charge and directing things. It's not like that. It's a consensus. I've talked before about the Irish consensus has shifted from being, in old establishment Ireland pre-independence, it was shaped by influences from the British and what was seen to be the sort of the right things to think and do at the time. And now we have a new colonial influence. It's not all bad, but the colonial influence is the Bay Area of San Francisco, and the ideas that come from there. That the new power, if you will, of that shapes thinking in the Dublin Bay Area is the Bay Area of San Francisco, and that's led to a lot of changes in Irish society. The most positive one of which is that the coffee is much better than it used to be in Ireland. But there are other things that have come along with that. And in terms of, you asked a very personal question in terms of how does the media hate me? I didn't really want to talk about myself here today, but to give some examples and beyond just me, I mean, let's take the Irish presidential election campaign in 2012, where RTE took out the leading candidate, was a guy called Sean Gallagher, in a way that favoured Michael D. Higgins, who became the two-term president and is still president of Ireland today. And they did that by reading what was, we now know, a fake tweet and ambushing that candidate, Sean Gallagher, in the final live TV debate and really torpedoing his prospects to win. And I think most reasonable observers would have said that Gallagher was on track to win had it not been for that. Now, you could say, well, he should have responded differently, etc. And yes, he should, but that's beside the point. The guy was treated and targeted in a way that was disproportionate and was treated in a way that, for example, Michael D. Higgins was not. In my own case, I was the subject back in November 2008 of an RTE primetime special for American viewers that would be kind of like a 60 minutes type of thing, which came along with the soundtracks, if you Shazam them, were from Assassin's Creed and something else abominable. I can't remember what it was, but anyway, all these kind of wind chimey kind of Hammer House of Horror type of soundtracks, and with dark helicopters flying around and everything else. And the question that was posed to the Irish people at that point was something like, is Declan Ganley a neocon or a CIA agent? Pick one.
That seems perfectly fair to me.
But there was what the Irish Independent, Sunday Independent editor at the time said, no small amount of the RTE license payers' money was spent on producing what was a party political hatchet job on a person running for a democratically elected position. Me at that time, I was running for the European Parliament. I was a first-time candidate that had massive resources poured into trying to make sure that I didn't get elected, frankly.
Yes.
And so and look, I could go on and on. I mean, what's striking in the Irish media context to me is you could say, well, look, if you're a player, if you are coming and in and espousing disruptive ideas that are disruptive to the groupthink bubble in Ireland, you have to expect to take flak. And as the old saying goes, if you're not taking flak, you're not over the target.
Right.
And I do expect that. It's almost fair game. The other side should be treated the same, but that's not going to happen. But what's more noticeable to me in Ireland is what isn't reported. It's what they choose not to report. So if I sneeze, if I'm in a dispute in a court, which I regularly am because of the business I'm in, whether it's in New York or it could be in Germany or wherever, that will be news in the Irish Times, and it will be, he said, she said, this stuff will be considered newsworthy. Yet there are things that I know that are huge news items, that would be game-changing news items, were they to be put in front of the public. These aren't conspiracy theories. These are real things that I know. And yet no one in the Irish media reports them, because they are considered to be untouchable, because they would shake the foundations of the state as it exists today, the people that are running it. So there is a conspiracy of silence around things that should be talked about, even if it makes people uncomfortable.
Yes.
And the absence of that reporting is what screams to me the loudest about how tightly gripped as you call it in your book, the corporate media is in a little market like Ireland, insofar as that there is a conspiracy of silence to not talk about things that, as they say in Ireland, the dogs in the streets know.
Right.
Lest those things be so shocking to the general public that they might insist upon change.
Well, we've discussed this, those of us who are Irish by ethnicity, but who've grown up outside of the home country, notice a real distinction between Irish abroad and the Irish at home, and that we seem to have displaced the church as the arbiter of what may be said and what may not be said. But now we've replaced it with the state. You hear the Irish politicians talking about the state constantly. And I have made one of my little comments is, we're in a war between the nation and the state, that the Irish nation is larger than Ireland, is larger than Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. It's an international group of people who share many traits in common. But the Irish state is exactly this thing that is preventing much of the truth to come out, because it's so concerned about maintaining its own power. Do you see it that way?
Yes. Yes, and the reason that they take that default position is because they believe that they are virtuous and that they possess the best knowledge, not supreme knowledge, but the best knowledge of what is best for Ireland and the Irish nation. And it all comes from one particular set of one particular place of political thinking. It is you could transpose it from the Bay Area of San Francisco to the Bay Area of Dublin and right back again, and they'd be both very, very comfortable transitions. So you move from one place to the other. One of the inconveniences in Ireland today is that, of course, not everybody will go along or fit into that mold. You don't have to go too far out of the urban areas of Dublin, and you will find our equivalent of deplorables. There was an Irish school textbook that just got pulled in the last couple of weeks, and it's quite a high-profile story now, thanks to what I will call disruptive niche media in Ireland that highlighted this. But the family that were portrayed as being the undesirable type of family to be part of. It was juxtaposed against a very cool, trendy family. The deplorable family were red-headed rednecks standing outside their shabbily thatched cottage with their cattle in the background. The one thing we didn't see was whether there was a pig in the parlour or not. They had hurley sticks, and according to the text that went along with it, they only played Gaelic sports. They didn't play quote unquote foreign sports. They only played traditional Irish music, and they had religion. There is nothing more horrific in the minds of an influential. It's not that everybody thinks this way, but people who make a lot of noise and who have, I suppose to their credit, the courage and the guts, the chutzpah, to push their agenda into things like children's textbooks, where everybody else in Ireland is too afraid to say anything, lest they be seen to not be modern.
Yes.
And not be going along. And this willingness in Ireland to go along, to get along, to nod, to tug the forelock, as we would say.
Right.
The forelock tugging Irish are in power, and they are forelock tugging to these values that are actually alien to our culture. And they're allowing them to be ridiculed. Now, they got embarrassed by it because sometimes it goes too far, as it did with the red-headed redneck book from a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. But it is reflective of how that groupthink bubble looks at the very large section of Ireland that is not going along with that groupthink.
But I would say that that's more or less specific to Ireland itself, that the Irish outside of Ireland don't fall into the Paddy forelock tugging,
No, they don't.
Yes, sir, boss.
And look, I'm speaking to you with this North London / Watford accent that was baked in the first 13 years of my life. My parents are from the west of Ireland. My mother's from Achill Island. My father's from Glenamaddy, County Galway.
Yeah.
They met in the Galtee Moor in Cricklewood, and I was born here. And we moved back to Ireland when I was 12, just turning 13 years of age. So I have been exposed to that diaspora, been part of it. I was brought up in it here in the UK for those early years of my life. And then I know it, and we've all been exposed to it deeply. Two of my kids have been students at the University of Notre Dame in Indiana, the Fighting Irish. And what I see in that Irish diaspora is that, contrary to the stereotype that we often see back in Ireland, is that the Irish diaspora held on to the most valuable, important parts of what Irish identity is. And they discarded or left behind the bits that didn't matter as much.
Right.
Because that's what happens when you do go into a genuinely multicultural environment, and you are living as a quote unquote minority. You keep the things that are worth keeping. You discard the things that are considered less important to your everyday life. And so the Irish diaspora, I would say, are polished jewels in terms of representing the best of what Irish identity is. But they are despised for it.
I can say this with my own family. My great-grandmother was born in the house in which I now live in Ireland. She didn't speak English when she came to Boston, and she dropped her Irish immediately and never passed it on to the subsequent generations. Didn't talk about the old country at all. Ireland disappeared into the mists of history, but she did what she was ambitious, and her kids were ambitious, and they got out of the Irish ghetto within one generation, joined the Marine Corps, saw the world, and here we are. That doesn't seem to be prized back home in Ireland. That's one of the issues I find as a returned Yank.
There's Joe Biden even says this. But that old saying that the Irish had, it was part of our kind of considered a quirky Irish saying, keep the faith.
Yeah.
They meant that because it was something that was worth keeping. It identified us and it differentiated us. And it represented the fact that we had a set of values, ideals, and a way of living within our families that was worth preserving and keeping on to, because it was the embedded software for success. And come rain or shine, if you had it, you were ready. If the sun came out, that embedded software would allow you to thrive, whether you had money in your pocket or you had nothing. And that keeping the faith was the Irish, was something, that piece of advice that was passed on, it's an extraordinary, pithy set of advice. If anything captures the genius of the Irish diaspora and what made it what it was and is, it was those few words.
And yet what's happened at home is that the faith seems to have been completely eradicated and replaced with this new secular faith.
Yeah, I mean, look, we do extremes very well in Ireland. The Jansenism that came into Ireland after the French Revolution, when Maynooth was first set up, we had that Jansenist influence that came over from those parts of France where it had caught hold, and the idea that you could be a better Catholic than somebody else, that there was, it was a puritanical streak.
Yeah.
And that leads to heresies of its own, where, and again, it was that prestige bubble. Every mother wanted one of her sons to be a priest, whether the son wanted to be one or not.
Oh yes, indeed, they did.
Yeah, and so many men were pushed in a direction that they probably would not have taken. Were they genuine vocations at all? So the Irish Catholic Church, which has done extraordinary things for the world. Wherever you go, be it Africa, Asia, the Americas, it's done extraordinary things for the world. But in the way that we now do wokeism, we did Catholicism to a degree where sometimes the form, the prestige, the power became what it was all about, not the substance of the faith itself.
Yes.
And we're seeing the same thing happen, I think, now in the Church of Woke, if I can call it that, is that we tend to overdo things. If you take a step back and you look at what goes on, and you look at the inability of people in power who absolutely know better, to not be able to speak the truth, to have to burn incense at the altars of wokeism, to be seen to go to those and go through those benedictions. They do it. And they do it because it's expected, because they think it's what you need to do to be considered respectable. And it's kind of funny.
So last question, can Paddy ever move into the modern world without making a hash of it? Or is it best to just stay back in the bog and continue life as it's always been?
No. This plastic Paddy here, I'm very much believe that, and there's lots and lots of evidence of it, that we are prepared, equipped, and formed to thrive and prosper, and bring whatever talents we have, be able to bring it to bear, whether they're in the arts. I mean, look at the proportion of actors, musicians, business people, entrepreneurs, writers. Thank you, writers. I mean, we actually do overperform, and there are. I can think of quite a number of them. There are hugely disruptive, brilliant ideas in all of those spheres, from business to the arts to publishing, in all of those spheres that are coming from the Irish and the Irish diaspora as well, but coming from the Irish culture, and which does point to the fact that it is thriving, it is still thriving, and its trajectory, I think, is upward, as long as we don't fall into the trap of tacking on all of this baggage that doesn't come from us, it doesn't come from our culture. Discard it. It's dead weight. It's not helping.
Declan Ganley, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Michael.